We're welcoming back Andy Sharma, who is chairman of the Hillingdon Chamber of Commerce and also runs the Business Results coaching company. Hi, Andy. Welcome back.
Hello, Steve.
Today, we're looking at discounting. And is discounting good or bad? Should you offer your clients or your customers a discount? What do you make of discounting, Andy?
Discounting is one of the most talked about things when you're doing business. When you look at discounting, you need to look at it more from your value perspective rather than client's expectation perspective. If you look at it from a retail perspective, you walk into, let's say, H&M or John Lewis or any of the supermarkets that you go into, you don't go pick up the product and go to the counter and say, okay, what is the discount I'm going to get? That never happens. But when you're dealing with businesses or, when you're dealing with the business owners or somebody, you're doing business with, for example, if you get a builder in and you want to do something in your house, you will say actually price quoted, and you will normally people tend to ask, okay, is that the best price? Or some conversations around that. So it's important for us to understand where does the discounting comes in. So there's a bit of mindset which needs to be looked into, where the discounting comes in, and what are you doing as the business for people to think that the discounting is on the table, to have that conversation. So I think it's important for you to first think on that and reflect on that, how you're positioning yourself in the marketplace. But I think discounting can be good in some situations. For example, if you're looking at giving discount for people to come and try your services, or if you're trying to build a base, then maybe discounting will work. But then you need to understand your cost. You need to understand what your fixed costs are, what your variable costs are. For that matter, it's to say, okay, what am I willing to discount up to? What is the limit that I'm going to be, willing to lose? Because if I'm willing to get the business, I may be able to, do that. So, for example, let's take an example of an airline. So if a plane needs to fly from here to Paris, there is a huge fixed cost in there. You need to have the cost of lease, you have the cost of the staff, the fuel. So more or less, there's a high fixed cost business. When you want to fill that plane, you're looking at how can I fill that plane really quickly. And that's what airlines do. They start the prices low, but as the plane fills up, the prices go up. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to recover their fixed cost as soon as possible. And once they are at the break-even point, that is when they will start looking at, increasing the prices, because that's where the premium lies. And it also plays into the psychology. When people want to book a last-minute ticket, they would be willing to pay a lot more versus before. So if you understand your costs, you will be able to take that call much more easily. I worked with one of my clients who was going through this dilemma as to, should I discount, should I not discount? And we sat down with the team and had conversations about what are the questions being asked, what are customers actually asking, and what is the best way to deal with when people ask for discount. So one of the things which we work with them is look at positioning the value rather than the price. So when somebody is buying something, they're usually buying a solution to the problem that they have. They're not interested in the product or service. They're more interested in what that product or service will help them with. So if your sales conversation, or if you position the value that you're delivering in terms of solution for their problem, usually the solution to the problem is worth a lot more than what they would be willing to pay for the product. So that's one way of looking at it. But again, it boils down to your overall approach. In some cases, the discounting may work. If you're looking at closing, you like Steve, like you do that. If somebody asks you for a discount, you may actually say, what are you willing to give me in return for that discount? And you can then take some value back from them and it's a good way of exchanging value while having a win-win situation for everybody. So it depends on the situation. It depends on your financials. It depends on your strategy. Discounting could be good and discounting could be bad. But besides that is, how well do you know your numbers? Have you done that analysis? And what is the end result or the objective of that exercise?
So for a regular business, some examples of value that the client could give you back in return for a discount, what would they look like? So I suppose it would be preferential payment term would be one possible thing.
Yes, something which is a reoccurring purchase, you may want to get them to pay you upfront and say, for example, if you pay me upfront for 6 months, I'm happy to give you a bit of discount, because then that adds to your cash flow. You have that money beforehand. That way you're locking in that customer as well. So, or you can look at some loyalty programs for that matter, if you're able to lock them in. So if you're able to lock them in some way or form, you may want to give that added value from that perspective. Also, bartering, that like you suggested, is another way of looking at it. Other areas to look at, how we can deal with discounting, is to look at different options on the table. So instead of just offering one, have two options and say, okay, if you want this, maybe this may be a better solution for you. Or, so let people choose. They make that choice and they understand. They're able to compare one to the other. Then they're able to see, actually, what am I paying more for, or what am I paying extra for? So these are some of the things which you could be doing in terms of dealing with the questions. Or
perhaps some psychology is involved at some point. A lot of people have that sort of bronze, silver and gold. Websites are a good example of this, aren't they?
Yes.
And I think it's been shown that most people tend to choose the silver option if they're given a bronze, silver and gold choice. So perhaps you can guide psychologically your clients, your customers, to go for that silver option. I don't know.
If you have the choices on the table, they're not in the corner. So they have an option to choose from. So rather than asking for a discount, they may actually say, actually, this is what fits in with my budget, and this is what my expectations are, and this is what would be the right solution for me. So always, it's a sales principle. Whenever you're looking at closing the sale, you're always giving them a couple of options to choose from, because psychologically it works in your favor, because client doesn't feel that it's not a yes or no. It's more of which one of these are better for me. And so people are able to choose.
I often think it would be good to ask a client, what is your budget? And most clients won't give you the answer to that because they want to keep it hidden. But actually that would be a very useful answer, to know what their budget is sometimes.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people do ask. Like, for example, if you walk into a store and if you want to buy a shirt, the salesperson may say, actually, what are you looking for? Do you have something in mind, or do you have a budget in mind? So it's a question to ask, but you may or may not get the answer. But a lot of times people don't, when they go out to shop or when they go out to purchase something, they have that budget, but usually that budget is flexible. It's not a rigid budget. As long as people feel they have the value, they're able to stretch or willing to stretch that budget a little bit. So your job as a business, or the person who's selling, is to understand the value that they're looking for and what is that value worth in monetary terms in their head. So more often than not, you'll be able to stretch as long as you deliver the value. The perceived value that they have in mind. Because if I go into a shirt, I may have a budget of, let's say, £20 to buy something. But then if I see something which is 25 quid, I may actually say, maybe this is a better choice. But unless I'm presented with that choice, or unless I'm asked the question, I may never be able to find that out. So it's about asking the questions. And you may or may not get the answers, but I think it's important for us to train ourselves to ask the right questions, to put people in that psychological state where they're focusing on the value and understanding what they're getting in return, rather than saying, okay, for this much money, this is what the best solution is.
It's clever companies that train their retail staff, for example, to upsell, isn't it, as well? There's one particular retailer who sells, shall we say, body products. I go in there thinking, right, I need some deodorant or something. My budget maybe is £5. I walk out there, I spent £40. They've upsold me on a kind of a bundle of products and stuff, but very, very good training, obviously, in terms of upselling. And often the products are discounted in the bundle. So that's perhaps something else you can consider. Is there a bundle option that you can offer that means the company takes more money, but actually the customer gets a better deal in the end?
It's really important to understand the best customer is your current customer.
Yeah.
That's the easiest one, because, you don't have to spend money on marketing to generate the lead and convert them into customers. If you've got a customer, you need to maximize the opportunity. So if you're able to create some bundles where overall, if you buy them individually, it'll cost a lot more, but if you buy them together, it'll be a lot more cost effective for them. That's a no-brainer. That's another way of looking at it. How can we get people to buy more by giving them the value? As for example, you're talking about deodorant. So if you go deodorant, you may actually want to pick up an aftershave also, or something else. So, if you create a bundle around that, you will say, okay, if I'm buying that, might as well pick up the other things, because you are reminded then what else could I be shopping for in maybe 2 weeks down the line, 3 weeks down the line. So it's a good opportunity for me to pick it up at one time. And if I buy them together.
It's also finding out what your customer's expectation of the product is. Are they looking for a Harrods experience, or are they looking for a Costco experience, and then presenting them with those two options perhaps. One might be preferable to them to have a bulk purchase of Costco whatevers versus a one-off John Lewis or Harrods purchase, for example.
It is all about asking the right questions and understanding their need before you offer the solution. More often than not, what I have seen is people start offering help without understanding what the client or the customer needs. It should be always the other way around. Ask questions, understand what they need, understand what their problem is, what they're trying to solve, what the objectives are, and then come up with the right solution or suggestions. Because when you do that, you're able to connect it emotionally with their need and their problem, and people would be willing to pay a lot more for that rather than paying logically for a deodorant for that matter. So it's important for us to keep that in mind.
We could talk for hours, I'm sure. So more of these business tips, you'll find them on the Hillingdon Chamber website, hillingdonchamber.co.uk. Thanks, Andy, for coming in. Good advice.
Thanks, Steve. It was good to be here.